The terrifying capture. Jack Carson had always dreamed of exploring uncharted planets, but crashing onto one. That was not part of the plan. His ship, the Starlight, had suffered a catastrophic failure while passing through an unknown star system. The engines were gone, communications were fried. And now, here he was stranded on a planet that didn't even exist on any galactic maps. Thick, dark green jungle surrounded him. Towering trees with glowing blue leaves stretched high into the sky. Strange sounds echoed from the shadows. Alien creatures rustling through the undergrowth, unseen but watching. Jack clutched his emergency survival pack and took careful steps forward. His suit's scanner beeped occasionally, picking up signs of oxygen, water, and large moving life forms. "Great," he muttered. "Let's just hope none of them see me as dinner." The air smelled damp, filled with the scent of strange plants. Every instinct told him to stay quiet. He needed to find shelter, repair his distress beacon, and boom! The ground shook, a deep, thunderous vibration, followed by another. Boom, boom, boom. Jack's breath caught in his throat. The rhythmic tremors were growing louder, closer. Something massive was moving through the jungle. He ducked behind a thick tree, heart pounding. His mind raced. What kind of creature made the ground shake like that? Then he saw it. A shadow loomed over the treetops. Jack's eyes widened as an enormous figure stepped into view. A giant woman, easily 20 times his size, emerged from the jungle. Her skin was smooth, a deep shade of violet that shimmered under the alien sunlight. Her hair was long and dark, cascading over her powerful shoulders. Her golden eyes scanned the landscape with an intense, predatory focus. She wore minimal armor, just enough to cover her form, yet her towering presence alone was terrifying. Jack froze. His brain screamed at him to run, but his legs refused to move. The giantess took another step forward, her foot crashing down with enough force to shake leaves from the trees. Her gaze swept across the jungle floor, and then her golden eyes locked onto him. Jack's blood turned to ice. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, with terrifying speed, the giantess reached down. No! Jack tried to turn, to sprint, but it was too late. Massive fingers wrapped around him. He barely had time to struggle before he was lifted high into the air, the jungle shrinking below him. Jack thrashed, kicking and punching, but his strength was nothing compared to the firm grip holding him. The giantess raised him to her face, her golden eyes studying him curiously. A human. Her voice was deep yet smooth, filled with amusement. Jack gasped for breath. "Let me go." She tilted her head, watching him wriggle. Then her lips curved into a smirk. "You're small, fragile. I wonder how you taste." She licked her lips. Jack's heart nearly stopped. Oh no. Panic surged through him. He fought harder, twisting in her grasp. "I'm not food. You don't want to eat me." The giantess chuckled. "Don't I?" She brought him closer to her face, inhaling deeply as if taking in his scent. Jack's skin crawled. Was this really happening? Was he about to be swallowed whole by an alien woman? "Please," he shouted. "I can help you. I can." Her grip tightened slightly, cutting off his words. "Help me," she repeated, as if considering the idea. Jack swallowed hard. "Think, Jack, think. Yes, I have knowledge. I'm an explorer, an engineer. I can fix things, build things." He forced himself to speak fast. "I crashed here. I have technology that you might find valuable. If you eat me, you lose that." For the first time, the giantess hesitated. Her smirk faded as she seemed to ponder his words. Then she let out a sigh and relaxed her grip, just slightly. Jack could finally breathe again. "Interesting," she murmured. "Perhaps you are more useful alive than as a meal." Jack nearly collapsed with relief. But his relief was short-lived. The giantess turned, carrying him effortlessly as she walked deeper into the jungle. Jack's stomach lurched as he bounced in her hand. "Wait, where are you taking me?" She glanced at him, amusement flickering in her golden eyes. "To my home, little one. I have plans for you." Jack's throat went dry. He had escaped being eaten, for now. But what kind of plans did a giant alien woman have for a human prisoner? And would he ever get off this planet alive? A surprising change in plans. Jack Carson dangled in the air like a helpless doll, gripped tightly in the massive violet fingers of the giantess. His mind raced as she walked deeper into the jungle, her every step sending shockwaves through the ground. The trees around them stretched high, but they were nothing compared to her, a living, breathing colossus. The dense jungle gave way to rocky cliffs and towering stone structures, some half-ruined, others completely intact. It was unlike anything Jack had ever seen, a civilization built for giants. Jack struggled, but her grip was unbreakable. "Let me go," he shouted, his voice tiny compared to the massive alien woman carrying him like a toy. She didn't even look at him. "Strange little creature," she murmured, more to herself than to him. "So small, so fragile. And yet, humans survive against all odds." Jack blinked. There was something odd about her tone. She wasn't treating him like a mindless animal. She was curious. He gathered his breath. "What do you want with me?" Finally, she glanced at him, her golden eyes glowing in the dim jungle light. "I haven't decided yet." Jack's stomach twisted. "Well, maybe I can help you figure it out by letting me go." She smirked. "You amuse me, little one. You speak with such confidence, yet you are nothing but a speck in my hand." She lifted him slightly, her fingers tightening. Jack felt a surge of panic. All right," he gasped. "At least tell me where you're taking me." The giantess slowed as they reached an ancient stone fortress, its walls carved with symbols Jack didn't recognize. Vines crept along the massive pillars, and at its center stood a colossal throne, cracked with age, but still intimidatingly huge. She strode up the stone steps and finally set him down, but not on the ground. Jack staggered as she placed him on a massive stone table high above the floor. He was now trapped in a space far too high to jump from. She sat down on the throne, her golden eyes never leaving him. Jack gulped. His legs shook as he backed away. "You haven't eaten me yet," he said carefully. "That's a good sign, right?" The giantess let out a low chuckle. "Perhaps." Jack exhaled, his mind racing. "I need a plan. I need a way out. So, what's your name?" he asked, his voice steady despite his racing heart. The giantess tilted her head. "You are bold to ask me questions, human." Jack forced a grin. "Hey, if you're going to kill me, at least let me know who's doing it." She regarded him for a moment before leaning forward, resting one huge elbow on the table. "Zyra." Jack blinked. He hadn't expected an answer. "Zyra." He nodded. "All right, Zyra. Now that we're on a first-name basis, mind telling me why I'm here?" Zyra's expression hardened. "Because I have been alone for a very long time." Jack frowned. He hadn't expected that answer either. "Alone." She sighed, her gaze shifting toward the carvings on the walls. "My people are gone. The Titanis were once the most feared warriors in the galaxy. Now I am the last." Jack's stomach sank. He had read stories about extinct civilizations, but this was different. "What happened to them?" he asked, his voice softer. Zyra's fist clenched. "The Tavari." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. He knew that name. The Tavari Empire was a ruthless galactic force, known for erasing entire species they deemed a threat. "They hunted us down," Zyra continued, her voice low and dangerous. "One by one. My people were powerful, but we were not infinite. They destroyed our cities, burned our worlds, and now," she exhaled sharply, "only I remain." For the first time, Jack saw something beyond the predator's smirk. pain, loneliness. Zira's eyes snapped back to him. But I will not fall like the rest. Jack swallowed. So, what does that have to do with me? Zira leaned closer, and Jack's breath hitched as her massive face filled his vision. Because humans have a reputation. Jack blinked. A reputation. Zira smirked. You are small, weak, and yet you thrive. I have seen reports of humans surviving against impossible odds, outsmarting enemies far stronger than them. Even the Taveri fear what humans might become. Jack stiffened, and her golden eyes gleamed. I need an ally, and I have decided you will be mine. Jack's stomach dropped. Wait, what? Zira leaned back, completely at ease. You said you were an explorer, an engineer, a survivor, and I am a warrior. We will work together. You will help me rebuild what was lost. Jack's mind spun. This was insane. He had crashed onto an uncharted world, been captured by a giant alien woman, almost eaten. And now, she wanted him to be her ally. He took a shaky breath. And if I say no? Zira smirked. Then I suppose I will have to find another use for you. Jack shuddered. She didn't have to say what that meant. He already knew. He had escaped death once. Would he be lucky a second time? An unexpected deal. Jack Carson stood frozen on the massive stone table, staring up at the colossal woman who had just turned his entire world upside down. You will be my ally, Zira had declared, her golden eyes gleaming with certainty. Jack's mind raced. Ally? What did that even mean? Was she asking him to fight with her? Did she expect him to somehow help a towering alien warrior reclaim her lost empire? It was absurd. And yet, Jack had no way out. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his nerves. Okay, Zira, he said cautiously. Let's say I believe you. That doesn't change the fact that I'm just a man, and you're, well, you. Zira smirked. Yes, you are small, weak, and fragile. But humans have something else. Jack narrowed his eyes. And what's that? She leaned closer, her massive face filling his vision. You adapt. Jack paused. She wasn't wrong. Throughout history, humanity had faced impossible odds, hostile planets, powerful alien species, technological gaps, and survived. Not because they were the strongest, but because they were the smartest. And right now, Jack needed to be smart if he wanted to get out of this situation alive. He folded his arms, forcing himself to look confident despite the fact that his legs were shaking. Let's say I agree. What exactly do you need me for? Zira leaned back, her expression unreadable. My people built wonders. Machines of war, weapons that could shatter planets. But those machines have remained silent for centuries. Jack's stomach twisted. Ancient weapons, silent for centuries. Let me guess, he said dryly. You need someone to fix them. Zira nodded. You said you were an engineer. Can you do it? Jack exhaled slowly. I don't know. That wasn't a lie. He had studied plenty of alien tech, but Giantess technology was something entirely different. The carvings on the walls showed massive war machines, towering weapons that looked like something straight out of Earth's darkest nightmares. And if Zira activated them again? Jack clenched his fists. What exactly do you plan to do with these weapons, Zira? For the first time, her smirk faded. She looked at the ancient carvings, her expression far away. Revenge, she said finally. Jack felt a cold chill. Revenge on the Taveri. Zira's gaze snapped back to him. And for the first time, Jack saw something other than amusement or arrogance in her golden eyes. Rage. They wiped out my people. Her voice was low, but there was a sharp edge to it. They burned our cities, enslaved our warriors, and hunted us like animals. She leaned closer, her golden eyes burning. I will return the favor. Jack swallowed hard. This was dangerous. He was standing face to face with the last of a species that had been powerful enough to terrify an entire galactic empire. And now she wanted revenge. Jack knew exactly how that kind of story ended. Entire civilizations burned. Planets turned to dust. Zira might see herself as a survivor, but if she unleashed those weapons again, the Tevari would not be the only ones to suffer. Jack took a deep breath. He had two choices. Refuse. He would probably be crushed, eaten, or left to rot in a cage. Agree. He would be helping a vengeful warrior restart a war that had ended centuries ago. Both sounded terrible, so he did the only thing he could. He bought time. Jack forced a casual shrug. Fixing old war machines isn't easy. I'll need time to study them, understand how they work. Zira narrowed her eyes. How much time? Jack grinned. A lot. For a moment, she studied him. Then, to his surprise, she chuckled. Clever. Jack relaxed slightly. Fine, Zira said. You will have time, but do not think of escaping, little one. Jack glanced around at the towering walls, the massive fortress, and the mile-long drop to the jungle floor below. He snorted. Yeah, I kinda figured that out already. Zira stood up, her massive frame casting a shadow over him. Rest, human, she said. Tomorrow, we begin. Jack exhaled. Tomorrow. That gave him one night to figure out how to survive this madness. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a warrior. But he was human. And if Zira thought he was just going to do whatever she wanted without a plan of his own, she was sorely mistaken. The truth about the hunt. Jack lay on the cold stone surface, staring up at the towering ceiling of the ancient fortress. The dim glow of alien torches cast long shadows, making the carvings on the walls appear alive, shifting with stories of war, destruction, and the fall of an empire. Despite his exhaustion, sleep refused to come. His mind raced, trying to make sense of his situation. Captured by a giantess, nearly eaten, and now he was being recruited to help her restore weapons of mass destruction, machines that had once made an empire tremble. And for what? Revenge. Jack let out a long breath. He knew what revenge did to people. It consumed them, turned them into something worse than their enemies. He had to be careful. If Zira got what she wanted, the entire galaxy could be caught in the crossfire. But if he refused? Jack shuddered at the memory of her massive fingers tightening around him earlier that day. She was playing with him now, but if she lost patience, he wouldn't get a second chance. He needed a plan. But first, he needed information. Jack sat up and scanned the room. Zira had left him alone, likely because there was nowhere for him to run. The stone table was at least 50 feet high, and the only exit was through a doorway meant for a Titanus-sized being. But there was something else. Across the room, Jack noticed a strange device, a broken piece of what looked like advanced technology. If Zira's people were destroyed centuries ago, why is there still working tech here? Jack's curiosity overpowered his exhaustion. He carefully climbed down the uneven cracks of the stone table and made his way to the device. Up close, he could see faint markings, similar to the ones carved into the walls. Symbols of Titanus engineering. Jack pressed a hand against it, and to his shock, a small hologram flickered to life. A low, distorted voice echoed from the machine. Titanus forces, under attack. Last stronghold failing. Tevari ships. Then the message glitched before one final phrase came through, clear and sharp. They do not seek to conquer. They seek to erase us. Jack's blood ran cold. This wasn't just a war. The Tevari hadn't attacked the Titanus to win land or power. They had hunted them down to the very last survivor. They had committed genocide. Jack sat back, staring at the flickering hologram. No wonder Zira was filled with rage. No wonder she wanted revenge. Jack ran a hand through his hair. What the hell was he supposed to do now? Footsteps. Boom. 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 Jack barely had time to move before the giantess stepped into the room. Her golden eyes locked onto him immediately. "You are awake," she said. "Good." Jack swallowed and quickly stood up. "Couldn't sleep. Guess being held captive by a warrior giant kinda messes with my ability to relax." Zira smirked, stepping closer. "You are braver than you look, human." Jack glanced at the hologram, then back at her. "I found something." She followed his gaze. When she saw the flickering message, her expression darkened. "You understand now," she said quietly. "They didn't just destroy my people. They erased us from history. They hunted us to extinction." Jack crossed his arms. "And now you want to hunt them back." Zira's gaze hardened. "I want justice." Jack let out a short laugh. "Justice or annihilation?" Zira's eyes flashed with warning, but Jack didn't stop. "I get it, Zira. What the Taveri did was evil. But tell me, what happens if you succeed? Do you plan to wipe out their entire species, kill billions just because of what their ancestors did?" For the first time, Zira hesitated. Jack pressed on. "The Taveri you hate are gone. The Empire has changed. If you go on a warpath now, you're just going to make history repeat itself." Silence. Then she turned away. "You are naive." Jack exhaled sharply. "No, I'm just not blinded by revenge." Zira didn't respond. Jack studied her carefully. Despite her strength, her power, and her confidence, he saw something else. Doubt. It was small, but it was there. And maybe, just maybe, that was his way out. Maybe Zira could be reasoned with. But before Jack could say anything else, a loud sound rumbled through the fortress. "Aeliart, unidentified Shaiki, AP Paroishing." Jack stiffened. Zira snapped to attention. "The Taveri." Jack's stomach dropped. "They found us." She turned to him, her golden eyes sharp. "Looks like your new empire is about to get its first battle." Jack clenched his fists. This was bad. This was very, very bad. The Great Escape Plan. The fortress trembled. Dust and debris rained down from the towering stone walls as a deep mechanical alarm blared through the massive chamber. "Aelivarti, unidentified Ipidas, AP Roiching." Jack froze. The Taveri had found them. He turned to Zira, expecting her to be in shock. But instead, she looked excited. Her golden eyes gleamed, her lips curling into a predatory smirk. "They've come to finish what they started," she murmured. "Good." Jack's stomach twisted. He had seen anger before. He had seen hatred. But Zira's rage was something else, something primal, something dangerous. He clenched his fists. "Zira, listen to me. Fighting them head-on is suicide. We don't know how many ships they have, how heavily they're armed." She turned to him sharply. "I do not fear the Taveri." Jack stepped closer, forcing himself to look straight up at her. "Then you're a fool." Silence. For a brief moment, tension crackled between them. Zira's golden eyes burned, but Jack didn't back down. Then, to his surprise, she laughed. "You are fearless for something so small," she said. "But you are not wrong. Charging into battle unprepared would be foolish." Jack exhaled. Finally, he glanced at the flickering hologram, his mind racing. The Titanus war machines. Do any of them still work? Zira frowned. "I do not know. They have been dormant for centuries." Jack nodded. "Then we need to find out. If we can reactivate even one of them, we might have a chance." Zira crossed her arms. "And if they do not work?" Jack took a breath. "Then we run." Zira's expression darkened. "I do not run." Jack held her gaze. "Then you die." The fortress shook again, this time with the deep rumble of engines overhead. They were running out of time. The race to the war machines. Zira moved fast, her massive strides carrying her through the fortress at lightning speed. Jack clung to her shoulder, his knuckles white as the walls blurred past. The deeper they went, the more the fortress changed. The stone corridors gave way to something different. The walls became sleek metal. The floor hummed softly beneath their feet. Strange glyphs flickered to life as they passed, reacting to Zira's presence. Jack's eyes widened. This isn't just a fortress. This is a Titaness military base. Zira nodded. The last one. They reached a massive chamber, and Jack's breath caught in his throat. Towering over them were 3 colossal machines, half buried under dust and debris. Titaness war mechs. Each one was shaped like a massive armored warrior, built to match Zira's size, covered in plating thick enough to withstand planetary bombardment. Jack's heart raced. If even one of these things still works, we might stand a chance. But as he got closer, his stomach sank. The machines were damaged. One had a gaping hole in its chest. Another was missing an entire arm. The third was covered in vines, its systems flickering weakly. "Please tell me at least one of these works," Jack muttered. Zira stepped forward, placing a massive hand on the third mech. The metal hummed beneath her touch, but the mech remained still. Jack hurried to what looked like a control console, wiping away centuries of dust. The symbols were foreign, but some patterns were similar to human tech. His fingers flew over the interface. Come on, come on. The screen flickered. System diagnostasis as INITIATE. A wave of relief crashed over Jack. It still has power. But then, warning. Primary power core off. Jack's hope vanished. It's dead. Zira's fists clenched. Jack turned to her, mind racing. Do you have any spare cores? Any energy sources? She hesitated. Then she nodded. There is one. The power core gamble. Jack followed Zira to another section of the base, where a large, circular chamber awaited. In the center, surrounded by ancient containment fields, was a glowing orb, pulsing with power. Jack's breath caught. Is that a Titaness fusion core? Zira nodded. The last of its kind. Jack swallowed. If we install this into the mech, will it work? Zira exhaled. I do not know. Jack ran a hand through his hair. We don't have a choice. If we stay here, the Taveri will bomb this place into dust. Zira stared at the core for a long moment. Jack could see it in her eyes. This was her last chance. If this failed, her people would be gone forever. Then, finally, she nodded. Then let us see if the last Titaness weapon can still roar. The final countdown. Jack worked faster than he ever had in his life. The fusion core was massive, but Zira lifted it like it weighed nothing, placing it into the war mech's power chamber. Jack hurried to the controls, sweat dripping down his forehead. Come on, don't explode on me. He flipped the switch. For a second, nothing happened. Then, a deep earth-shaking hum filled the air. The war mech's eyes flared to life, glowing with power. Jack laughed breathlessly. It works. Zira's golden eyes burned. Then let us show the Taveri what the last Titaness can do. The attack begins. The moment the war mech powered up, the fortress shook violently. The Taveri ships had arrived. Through the fortress windows, Jack saw dozens of Taveri dropships descending, sleek black vessels, bristling with weapons. Jack's stomach twisted. They're not here to capture us. They're here to wipe us out. Zira smirked, stepping into the cockpit of the war mech. Then let us remind them why they feared the Titaness. The mech's engines roared to life, dust and debris blasting outward as it stood to its full, terrifying height. Jack grinned despite himself. Now this is gonna be interesting. The final battle. The war mech's engines roared, shaking the ancient fortress as Zira stepped forward, her massive form melding with the machine like it was an extension of her own body. Jack watched from below, his heart hammering in his chest. Through the shattered windows of the fortress, he could see the Taveri fleet descending, sleek, black warships slicing through the alien sky like silent predators. This wasn't a raid. This was extermination. Jack swallowed hard. Zyra, I hope you know what you're doing. Her voice crackled through the mech's external speakers, low and dangerous. I was born for war, little one. Then, with a single earth-shaking step, she charged forward. The Tavari make their move. The Tavari ships hovered, their dark hulls glinting against the blood-red sky. A deep mechanical voice echoed through the fortress ruins. Giantess warrior detected. Initiating final purge. Jack gritted his teeth. Oh yeah. Purge this, you bastards. The first barrage of plasma fire rained down. Zyra didn't flinch. Her mech's arm raised, an ancient energy shield activating just in time. The blasts collided, scattering harmlessly against the shimmering barrier. Jack barely had time to process what was happening before Zyra returned fire. A single pulse cannon on the mech's shoulder whined as it built up energy, then fired. The shot tore through the sky, hitting one of the Tavari warships dead center. For a brief moment, the ship remained intact. Then, boom! A massive explosion ripped through the air, sending flaming debris plummeting toward the jungle below. Jack whooped. Hell yeah! First blood. Zyra let out a low, satisfied laugh. One down. Many more to go. Jack's role in the fight. Jack wasn't just going to sit and watch. He sprinted toward the control panel in the ancient war room, his fingers flying across the console. If Zyra was going to hold them off, he needed to give her every advantage possible. The fortress defenses were still partially operational, old, battered, but functional. Come on, come on. His eyes darted across the screen, scanning for anything useful. Then, there, he slammed his hand on the activation switch. Outside, massive turrets hidden within the ruins whirred to life, their ancient targeting systems locking onto the incoming Tavari ships. Jack didn't wait. He opened a comm link to Zyra. I just activated the fortress guns. That should keep them from overwhelming you. Zyra smirked. Good. Then I can focus on crushing them up close. Jack's stomach tightened. He had no doubt Zyra could fight. She was a warrior, after all. But this was different. The Tavari weren't here for a battle. They were here for genocide. If they overwhelmed her, if she fell here, the last Giantess would die. And that thought made his blood turn cold. The battle rages on. The Tavari responded to the fortress's sudden defense systems with brute force. Their remaining ships split into two formations. Half engaged Zyra in the air, while the other half descended into the ruins, deploying ground troops. Jack's eyes widened. Zyra, they've got ground forces coming in. Do you copy? I see them, she growled. Jack saw her shift her stance, the massive war mech lowering into an attack position. Then she leaped. For a second, Jack thought his eyes were deceiving him. The war mech, despite its enormous size, moved with astonishing speed. Zyra landed in the middle of the Tavari ground forces, the impact sending shockwaves through the jungle. The first squad of Tavari barely had time to react before Zyra's mech swung a massive arm, sending them flying like ragdolls. Jack flinched as their shrieks were cut short. But the Tavari weren't fools. The next wave opened fire immediately, their weapons blazing with energy. Zyra roared. Jack had never heard a sound like it. Something ancient, something furious. She charged. She was unstoppable. Every blast that struck her armor barely slowed her down. She ripped through enemy ranks, tossing Tavari soldiers aside like toys, her war mech's blade arms slicing through metal and flesh alike. Jack felt a chill. This isn't just war for her. This is vengeance. The Tavari's final move. Jack's victory rush didn't last long. A new alert flashed across his screen. Warning. Taviera FLAJSHAIDDT. Jack's heart sank. Through the smoke and chaos, he saw it. A massive warship, larger than all the others, descending directly toward the battlefield. It wasn't here to fight. It was here to end this. Jack slammed the comms. Zira, they've got a flagship coming in. We need to get out of here. For the first time, Zira hesitated. Jack saw her war mech pause, surrounded by bodies and burning wreckage. For her, this was the moment she had been waiting for. She could end the Taveri. Right here. Right now. Jack's voice was desperate. Zira, listen to me. They don't care about fighting fair. They're going to bomb this entire place into the ground. You need to get out of there. The Taveri flagship's cannons glowed, preparing to fire. Zira stared at it. Then, without another word, she ran. The escape. Jack was already moving, sprinting toward the hangar. He had one chance. A single Taveri transport ship had landed among the ruins, still intact. Jack didn't hesitate. He bolted inside, powering up the controls. Come on, come on. A second later, Zira appeared, her massive form barely squeezing into the cavernous hangar. The Taveri flagship fired. The fortress shook violently, cracks splitting through the ancient walls. Jack screamed into the comms. Now, Zira. Zira leaped. She grabbed onto the ship's exterior, her massive fingers denting the metal as Jack punched the engines. The ship lurched forward, rocketing into the sky, just as the Taveri's final blast struck the fortress. The entire structure collapsed. Jack felt his heart drop as the ruins of the Giantess stronghold were swallowed by flames. The aftermath. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Zira sat in the cargo hold, her golden eyes fixed on the planet below. Her home, her past, her final battlefield. Jack swallowed. I'm sorry. Zira closed her eyes. Then, finally, she spoke. This is not the end. Jack looked at her. Zira turned to him, her golden eyes burning once more, not with rage, but with determination. The Taveri still exist, and I will not stop until they answer for what they have done. Jack sighed. Yeah, I figured you'd say that. And with that, their journey was far from over. A new beginning. The stolen Taveri transport ship cut through the vast darkness of space, leaving the burning ruins of Zira's homeworld behind. Jack sat in the cockpit, gripping the controls tightly, sweat clinging to his brow. The ship's engines groaned, damaged from the last-minute escape, but they held together, barely. Behind him, Zira sat in the cargo hold, her massive frame hunched over. She hadn't spoken much since they left. Jack glanced at the nav systems. They had put a lot of distance between themselves and the Taveri fleet, but that didn't mean they were safe. The Taveri didn't like loose ends. And right now, they were the biggest loose ends in the galaxy. Jack sighed, running a hand through his messy hair. All right, we're alive. That's the good news. Zira didn't react. Jack tapped the side of the screen. The bad news is that we just declared war on an empire that doesn't lose. Still nothing. Jack swiveled in his chair. Zira, you in there? Slowly, she lifted her golden eyes to meet his. And what Jack saw wasn't defeat. It was something far more dangerous. Determination. The mission is not over. Zira stood up, towering over the cargo hold. We must move quickly. Jack frowned. Move where? Zira walked to the central control panel, her massive fingers gliding over the screen. The Taveri will not stop until we are dead. Jack sighed. Yeah, I got that part. What I don't get is what we do next. We can't fight an empire alone, Zira. She looked at him. Who said we would be alone? Jack blinked. What? She turned the screen toward him. A holographic map flickered to life, showing multiple points of interest across the galactic sector. Jack leaned closer. Some of them were just dead planets. Others were hidden outposts. One stood out. A red-marked system labeled HFY Sci-Fi. Jack's breath caught. Wait, you mean? Zira nodded. I am not the last. The Lost Warriors. Jack's mind spun. All this time, he had assumed Zira was the sole survivor of her species, that she had been fighting alone for centuries. But if there were others? Jack rubbed his chin. Okay, that changes things. Where are they? Zira zoomed in on a dark, uncharted part of space. Hidden. Jack frowned. And you think they're going to help you? Zira's jaw tightened. They will not have a choice. Jack let out a slow breath. Right. So let's say we find them. Then what? We rebuild an army. Zira didn't hesitate. Yes. Jack groaned, slumping back into his chair. Of course. Because that's easy. She crossed her arms. Do you have a better idea? Jack was silent. Because no, he didn't. The Tevari weren't just a threat anymore. They were actively hunting them. If they wanted to survive, they needed allies. Even if those allies were Titaness warriors who had abandoned their own people. Reaching the exiles. The ship's engines whined as Jack input the coordinates. This is gonna take us a while, he muttered. We're limping through space in a stolen ship, and if the Tevari have tracking beacons on this thing. VEP. Jack froze. Zira narrowed her eyes. What was that? Jack scanned the ship's systems. His stomach dropped. Damn it. Zira stepped forward. Explain. Jack gritted his teeth. The Tevari tagged us. This ship has a locator beacon. They already know where we are. Zira's expression darkened. How long until they arrive? Jack checked the scan data. If they sent a long-range hunter fleet, maybe 2 hours. She nodded. Then we make a stop. Jack frowned. Where? She tapped a smaller moon on the star chart, located just outside their route. There. Jack squinted at the data. A junk planet. Why? Zira smirked. Because it is time for a new ship. Breaking into a scrapyard. They landed on the junk planet, a desolate wasteland of abandoned ships, discarded tech, and smuggler hideouts. Jack adjusted his jacket, stepping down the ramp cautiously. This place looks like the inside of a black market dealer's brain. Zira walked beside him, scanning the wreckage. We need a vessel fast enough to outrun the Tevari, and strong enough to withstand an ambush. Jack sighed. Great. Let's just hope the locals are friendly. They weren't. The moment they stepped into the scrapyard, weapons were drawn. Jack raised his hands. Okay. We're just browsing. A large, multi-armed alien stepped forward, eyes glinting. You pay, or you leave. Zira smirked. Jack sighed. Oh no. Zira took a single step forward. We are taking the ship. The alien smirk dropped. That is not how this works, Giantess. Zira cracked her knuckles. It is today. The fight lasted 30 seconds. Zira moved like a storm, throwing enemies aside, breaking weapons, and tearing through their defenses like paper. Jack ducked behind a crate. Remind me never to piss you off. When it was over, Zira planted a foot on the scrapyard leader's chest. The ship, she said simply. The alien gulped. Take whatever you want. A new ship, a new future. Jack and Zira boarded their new stolen ship, an old but powerful battlecruiser that had been abandoned years ago. Jack ran diagnostics. Engines are good. Hyperdrive intact. Shields at 50%, but we can work with that. Zira settled into the co-pilot seat. Then let us go. Jack glanced at her. For the first time since they met, she didn't look like a warrior with nothing left to fight for. She looked like someone ready to rebuild. Jack smirked. All right, Titaness. Let's go find your lost warriors. Zira's golden eyes gleamed. And when we do, the Tevari will regret ever thinking us dead. With a final push of the throttle, their new ship jumped into hyperspace. Their war had just begun.